Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally we interview someone, but today we're going to tell you how to make a great short film. And to help me do that is the founder of the Katra Film Series, and he's also the co-founder of Bowery Film Festival, Mr. Geoffrey Guerro. Welcome, Geoffrey.
Hey, welcome, Jason. Thank you for having me again.
Welcome back, man.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
So we did an episode with you. We talked about you. That's episode 421 of the podcast. But now, because you see so many short films, I want to talk about what stands out, what makes one great, and how you're able to. The amount of films that you have to see and what you see that makes, that's a great short film kind of thing. And because a lot of indie makers make short films, or they start out making short films. So I want to tell kind of people how to do it the right way. So just to get some background, so just for Katra alone, because you do Katra and Bowery Film Festival.
Yeah.
But just for Katra alone, because that's mostly short films.
Mostly shorts. We screened several features this year. And we're getting more features that we're going to be programming next year. But yeah, it's mainly short films.
It's probably like 90% shorts.
Yeah, I would say about.
So in a given series, how many short films do you actually screen versus how many submissions do you get? So how many submissions do you get and how many do you actually wind up choosing for it?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, we get, in a year, we'll get over 1,500 films, both Katra and Bowery. Seasonally, we get for every quarter, because Katra is a quarterly festival. We watch anywhere from 150 to 200 shorts.
Right.
And we program, I would say, 15 to 20 shorts into the competition.
So roughly a tenth of what you see.
Yeah.
So, if you're submitting to his film festival, which if you have a short film, I recommend you do, you have a 1 out, or you have like a 1 out of 10 shot of getting in, if my math is correct, something like that. But that's also, so you're seeing all of these films, I imagine, there's certain elements that you look for or certain things that stand out that make you want to program that film, as opposed to, the ones that you watch and don't program.
Right.
So give me some what are the elements of what you find? What do you think makes a great short film?
Original storytelling. I mean, we really go out of our way to look for shorts that have something unique, have a fresh voice, and just a different perspective, from what you normally see in Hollywood. We really look for dynamic characters, three-dimensional characters, engaging storylines. And not so. Some of the problems. I mean, I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll go into the don'ts a little bit later.
Yeah, but
because there's a lot. I think there's probably more don'ts than do's.
Oh, way too many don'ts. I mean, the number of films that we watch are just. It's pretty daunting. It could be. At times, it could be torturous to sit through some of these shorts. But there. With that said, there are moments and there are films that we see that are just mind-blowing, and they deserve to have an audience and to get showcased in a theater such as the Alamo.
It's probably hard to define because you guys have a range of shorts that you program. There's stuff that you program that looks like more on the lower budget, more I don't want to say amateur, but amateurish, and then you have stuff that's done on almost like a Hollywood level. You're looking for great characters, original storytelling. But how much do things like production value? If somebody's got, great art direction and costumes and, set design and things like that, does that factor into it?
It does, but it's not an automatic. It's not going to automatically get you into our festival. We've had one of our. Oh, I guess we'll talk about that later. But I mean, there's some films that they spend a couple dollars, as opposed to some of the other films that we've screened that spend tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And those smaller scale shorts, they really have something to say. The production value might not be there. It might not look like a Hollywood film, but it has something very impactful and unique, and it stands out. And it stands out from all, you can have an amazing, polished film shot on the highest end cameras, but there's something about the smaller scale films that really interests us.
So, in saying something like, does it have to be like a poignant, like, does it have to be a drama about racism, or can it be a comedy? That's,
Both. I
Yeah.
mean, we'll screen if they're good. If it's good, we'll screen it. Just make a quality film, web series. That seems to be the rage these days. As long as there's something unique about it, that's fun. We love comedy because we get a lot of dark, bleak stories, and sometimes it's good. Other times they can be, pretty depressing. So we tend to we have a soft spot for comedies.
So something that's quality, you of course the elements have to be there. It has to be well directed, it has to be well acted, well written, all that. It doesn't. You could shoot it on an iPhone, but if those basics aren't done, if those basic needs aren't met, you're not going to get any higher up the ladder. Probably what we'll say, we'll tell people more is the don'ts. Like, so what are give me the top 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever mistakes that you see that you're the pitfalls that people fall into when they make short films.
Where do I start, Jason? Do we have enough time? I mean, one particular thing that we've noticed a lot recently is 3 to 5 minute title sequences, opening title sequences.
Really?
I've seen a lot of those. We've seen our programming team we've seen a lot of shorts like that, and we just don't understand it. Why? You only have a small amount of time to tell a story. When we sit down to watch these works, we want to really get drawn into right away because we have hundreds and thousands of films to go through. So the 2-3 minute title sequence, just throw it out the window. We don't need it. Just give us a couple of seconds of the title and then end it. You're gonna end the film or the web series with the credit sequence anyway.
Okay.
So
the first don't is don't do a long time. The title sequence. The first do would be cut to the chase.
Exactly. Cut to the chase.
Get right to the action kind of thing. I think a lot of that stuff is filler. Mm-hmm. It's or it's somebody who's like, I'm really good with After Effects, so I'm gonna make this cool time. And you're like, that's a great title sequence for a feature film.
Exactly.
I think probably the biggest problem too is people trying to make feature length ideas in short films.
Oh yeah.
So that's the first thing. Don't do a 3 to 5 minute title sequence in your 10-minute film.
Exactly.
What are some of the other ones?
Poor performances. I mean, we get a lot of works that just the acting is not there. You can tell that either the director didn't rehearse, didn't put the time and effort to work with the actors.
Just amateurish acting.
Oh yeah, it's just terrible. I mean, you watch it doesn't make sense. So I would say that's a big thing. Just focus on your actors. It's I mean, your work. You only have a small amount of time to tell a story, and if you can't believe the actors, then you're not going to believe the story.
And a lot of these things are performance driven. You know, like a lot of times you don't have a big budget, so you're not doing, you're not, the hero isn't fighting a dragon at the end of your movie most of the time. It's people talking to people. So if you don't have solid performances there, your movie really falls down.
Exactly.
And probably, they say casting is 80% of directing. Yeah. So it's probably people either not able to afford the cast they want, or not writing for the cast that they have. You're not playing to you're not if you try to cast, if you're a young person, you're 25, your 25-year-old girlfriend is not old enough to play your mother. You're not going to get a realistic performance that way. So maybe don't write a 50-year-old character. If you're not certain you can get a 50-year-old actor.
Exactly.
And probably everything's going to fall down to script. But probably that's the big thing I notice a lot too. Is the performances could be better, kind of thing. What are some of the other things that you notice?
Poor audio, sound. I mean, cinematography and audio are just the key ingredients to quality filmmaking. And if you can't get that right, if you can't get good sound, you're in the wrong business, in the wrong art form that you're trying to work in.
And a lot of people would say it's more important. The sound is actually more important than the visual. A lot of times.
I would think they work hand in hand. You need good video and you need good audio.
I saw this great video do you know who David Sandberg is? So
Rings a bell.
he did the film Lights Out. He did Annabelle Creation,
Okay.
and he just directed Shazam for
Okay,
Warner
okay.
Brothers. So he started out making short films, and he did this example where he took a scene from one of his movies, and he showed you a scene with bad visual, and then a scene with bad audio, and the bad audio was more frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you could see people talking clearly, but you couldn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people say it's like 60%, like sound in general, like not just the on-set audio of people talking, but sound design.
Sound design. Oh yeah, that's essential.
How many times have you seen a movie where people are sitting around a kitchen table and it's just dead? Like there's no other sound. It
Yeah.
sounds like they're in a studio, and you're like, this
Where's
you
the
can't put your
animation?
finger on it, but it's
Yeah.
like, wait, that doesn't sound right. I remember I made my first short film. The most miraculous thing were the layers of sound that we were putting in the edit timeline, just trying to get a room to sound like a room.
Yeah.
The right amount of reverberation, traffic outside,
right.
Crickets,
The
whatever it is.
refrigerator, the humming sound.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Just to get a decent amount of room tone that makes it sound real.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just sounds dead.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to put your finger on it, but it just doesn't sound right.
Got to get your sound right.
And then, picture, like you can shoot a movie on an iPhone, but if you frame it well and you know how to move a camera and you know how to light.
Yeah.
I think probably lighting is more important. It doesn't really matter what you shoot on, but how you light something is huge. And if you don't know what you're doing lighting-wise, it's not going to look good.
No.
You could have the greatest red camera. You could shoot it on the Alexa, but if you can't light, it's still going to look terrible.
You'll notice it.
So other than that, are there any other of these kind of like mistakes or pitfalls that you see filmmakers falling into?
Yeah, complicated storytelling. I mean, we see a lot of films with just like multiple storylines, like 10 cast members for a 5-minute short, and you don't know where the story is going. Focus your story. And the best advice I could give emerging filmmakers is just keep it simple, stupid, which is what KISS. This is a thing that.
It's an old principle we were taught in school.
And so that's just keep it very simple. I mean, one of our recent winners was a short film that it took place in a warehouse, post-apocalyptic sci-fi thriller. I'm a big fan of those kind of films. Two actors sitting down, and basic camera, medium shots, close-ups, and the performances were on point. The production value was on point, and they only spent a couple $100.
Yeah, you don't need to spend millions of dollars on these things. The one I was going to give an example of, and I actually, I did a write-up for the website. You can find it on norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. But I talked about the film Zero.
Zero, that's right.
And that is a great little movie.
That is,
and it's very, very simple. There's like 3 people in it.
Two, I think.
Well, there's 2 main characters, and then one enters toward the end. But I don't even know.
Do they enter? I don't think they do. It's just
you
an
kind of
ominous.
see that.
It's like in a shadow. You don't even see them.
You like sort of see somebody,
Yeah.
but and for the most part, it's just the one person. It's just the girl.
Yeah.
So that film was made by the guys called the Brothers Lynch, and it stars Lady Mormont from Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah.
And who's terrific. But like Bella Ramsey is her name.
Yeah.
Great little movie, and it's simple, and there's some effects work I think at the end, but it looks terrific, and it's just well shot, well written. There's not a ton of dialogue in it, and it's simple. And I think those are the ones that are the most impactful.
Yeah.
Because if you've seen a 10-minute movie and you're like, wait, Uncle George and Aunt Mary and then the dad and the mom and you're like, there's 15 characters. You don't even know what you saw. You don't even have time to process it.
Yeah.
What's like the money length for you for a short?
The sweet spot. I've been telling everybody this: 10 to 12 minutes. And I've heard, this is like an inside information here. We've heard from some of the top festivals. 10 to 12 minutes is the sweet spot. I mean, there's some wiggle room. You can have a 15, 17-minute film, but if your goal is to get into festivals and get eyeballs to see your film, don't do it longer than 12 minutes. Don't make it longer than 12. keep it under 12.
The thing I also noticed too is that a lot of people, when they get into like the 20-minute plus, if you're watching a feature film, and I've said this on the show before, so forgive me for repeating myself if you're an avid follower of the show, but once you get in the 20-25 minute mark, that's you're setting your audience up for a feature-length movie pace.
You are setting them up, yeah.
And that's usually when the first act becomes the second act. That's like usually in a script, that's the first turning point right around page 20 to page 30 where the plot kicks off. So you really kind of set yourself up to fail because you're going like, hey, here's a great first act, and then it's done. And then the audience is, another thing David Sandberg says on his channel is like the ending is really important. Yeah. Like the audience will forgive a lot in a movie if you have a really strong ending.
That's true.
True. And if it's, and for, what you're talking about, something that's like short and impactful, something that's either a punchline at the end that you get a great laugh and leaves the audience happy, or something that's like gut punch, something that's like, oh wow, that just or something, or there's a wow factor. The thing I liked about Zero is like, she's trapped in this house the whole time, and as soon as the movie's opens up, you're like, wow, because it answers all of the question, but with just visuals.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't have to tell you.
It does not have to tell you.
Yeah,
No, it's a
that's
visual
probably
medium.
another thing too. Is like the show don't tell principle.
Show don't tell. Yeah, no, that's a big thing. We do get a lot of films from both sides. You got films that, like we were talking about before, comedies. Comedies sometimes you need to have a lot of dialogue to tell a good funny story. But then there's those dramas like Zero that just two characters. Setting a tone. I think tone is very important in a short film. If you set that
Also
tone
the
right
hardest
off the
thing
bat,
to do.
and
too.
very hard. Yeah, it's very hard to do because then you have to keep it consistent throughout, and it's just a lot of it's a big juggling act.
A feature film has the opportunity to change tones.
Yeah,
You can switch up and surprise the audience. If you've got 10, 12 minutes to work with, you really have to like pick a tone and stick with it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to establish. Like in a comedy, in the first page of the script, if it's short, you have to give the audience a license to laugh.
Right.
Because people don't, especially if you're especially if you're sitting at the Alamo Drafthouse with a bunch of other filmmakers, you want to give those guys a license to laugh. Otherwise, they're going to think they're laughing at your film. You know what I mean? And that nobody wants that.
No.
Like you want people to laugh with your film
Yes.
if it's a comedy, but you don't want people laughing at your film.
No, and that happens a lot. So
Right, and
not in the theater, maybe afterwards they'll come up to us and like, what were they thinking?
Yeah, when you have a comedy and you're able to like let the audience in on the joke right away, then they're kind of with you. It takes maybe 30 seconds to lose an audience and like forever to get them back. So once it's like being on stage.
Yeah.
If you've lost the moment on stage, 30 seconds to lose the moment, and then like 5 minutes to get it back. And then by the time you've done that in the film, your movie's over.
Movie's over. Yeah.
Are there any other examples of stuff that like really kind of hit for you this year? Because you've seen a bunch of them this year.
Thousands. Been sitting through thousands. Not just myself. Our team's been watching thousands. Well, we had a film this past weekend as part of our sidebar series. So we do a sidebar event where we program alternative films and works by underrepresented communities. We had a film about the Sikh community. With the first generation family members living here in the States, and what that goes, the culture clash that happens with the old, the motherland and the family traditions and culture.
Is this a comedy or a drama?
It was a drama. It was heavy. It was a mix. It was interesting because it mixed a little bit of Bollywood element, like that.
Oh, interesting.
That Bollywood form of storytelling, but also made it very contemporary and had an American feel to it, like the American style of filmmaking, because the way it was shot and the tone and the dramatic aspects of the.
What were some of the elements of it that made it kind of stand out? I mean, was the cinematography strong?
The cinematography was definitely very strong. It was they really put a lot of effort into camera work, camera angles, and movement. Hair and makeup. I mean, we were talking about before. That's very important, and you can tell they put a lot of work into that.
I think it's probably another thing where your average short falls down.
Yeah, you gotta definitely pay attention. There was a lot of makeup and special wardrobes that were used for some of the actors.
Mm.
The performance, that was key. That was very critical. I mean, they had amazing performances. The film was called Forbidden, and it just touches on this interesting dynamic between the family members, and it's a pretty violent film, but it's pretty real, dealing with domestic violence in this community.
I think that's a lot of it too. Is like, it's not really about the camera, but what's in front of it, and you can still have good art direction if you're mindful of the shot. Like if you're looking at your visuals, and I mean, we shoot in New York City, so in a way we have an unfair advantage because New York looks like New York, where and it's like one of those places where you could just point the camera down the street and you get this great iconic buildings and stuff like that. So and if you're shooting in Kansas, it's going to be a different thing.
Yeah.
But I think if you're mindful of just kind of like dressing a couch, covering up the rip in the upholstery, or doing little things, putting in a plant or a picture or something to fill the shot and not have like dead space and things like that. Because I think those are the things that, like, when you see white walls in an apartment.
Oh yeah, you gotta fill it.
You're like, ugh. It looks ugly, and you're just like, nobody put any consideration into this shot.
Listen, you learn the hard way in this industry. I mean, I'm a filmmaker myself, and I've been guilty of that. Just leaving, when you have no money and you're shooting a film, you just forget about these little things. But be mindful when you're out there, you're shooting with a crew, and just pay attention to it's the smallest details that really, really count and can change your film and make it much better. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just looking at the edges of a shot.
Yeah.
And as a director, it's hard because you're always looking at, and probably you're producing and you've written it and you're doing 15 different jobs.
Yeah.
You're the prop and costume guy too. But like when you're looking at that frame, look at each frame and say like, okay, what doesn't belong in this frame? What looks good in this frame? Is the shot composed well?
Exactly.
And then put on your damn headphones and see if the audio is good, because nobody cares about your character if they can't understand what they're saying. And those are just the two most basic things.
Yeah.
And then everything else is goes on top of that. You have great performances. You need and the script. One thing I'll say is I did a short film. We shot on 16 millimeter, and it's how this show began.
16 millimeter.
16 millimeter black and white short film.
That goes back.
Yeah, so we did that. It was a long story, and it was how No Rest for the Weekend began.
Okay.
It was a documentary about the making of this film. So we had 4 rolls of black and white 16 millimeter negative film that doesn't exist anymore from Kodak, and we made a 4-minute short film out of it. So I was limited as to the amount of film that I could use. So everything had to be storyboarded with like an inch of its life. So I knew what every shot was, and the prep was very intense. To get a 4-page script, it took me 3 months of writing because I had to whittle this story down to its most basic elements, and I did not have a sync sound camera, so I couldn't do any dialogue on screen that wasn't ADR. So I wrote it with the minimal dialogue, all visuals. And it was a great exercise in filmmaking because when you're making a short film, you got to get to the point. And if your film is super wordy, it's just going to take time. And there are other ways to reveal character besides dialogue. So that is the first series of this. You can find that on the website btrp.nyc. But yeah, that's how this all began. And it was a real exercise in storytelling. And I think if more people started out and said, what if I had to tell this story without any dialogue? What if I just had to tell it visually?
Yeah. MOS, they call it, right?
Yeah, if you shoot the whole movie MOS. And Zero was like that. That's why I liked it, because the visuals are so strong that when you saw it, you could put that movie on in a bar with no sound, and you're eating or whatever and drinking,
and you'll notice
you could see what was happening.
Like, what's going on there?
Why is she there? Why is it just it draws you in?
It does draw you, and that's what a good short should do. You should be able to turn the sound off and watch it, and still get the story.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, I think we're ready for your next film.
Yeah, maybe. We got to wrap up, but for those who want to know more about you and more about Katra, where can they find you guys on the web?
KatraFilmSeries.com, KATRA Filmseries.com, BoweryFilmFestival.com, BOWERY Filmfestival.com, and Film Freeway. Send us your films. We're open for the 2020 season.
listen, we're looking for all kinds of films. You know, we don't discriminate. We're not biased toward any community. We just look for quality storytelling, from no budget to big budget. Blow our minds.
I've been there, and they do have a great variety of films, and it's a real pleasure. Like it's a film fest that like fans of film can go see, not just a bunch of filmmakers. So check it out, Katra Film Series. Thanks so much for coming, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. We'll
always a
do more
pleasure.
of these. You know,
Yeah,
we'll
please.
do more of this stuff.
I'll come back anytime.
Thank you for joining us once again, taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of this show and more of our content, including our movie reviews, you can find them on our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. You can also subscribe on wherever you're listening to this or on your favorite podcast app. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/norestoftheweekend. Once again, just want to give a quick thanks to Geoffrey Guerro for showing up. Thanks so much, man. This has been great.
Jason.
We'll do more of this stuff. Tell us if you like it. Tweet at us or whatever, at BTR Productions. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.